shared aircraft strike hazard faces all pilots. On takeoff and landing and on all low-level flights, you share their environment.
Any Air Force base can have a serious problem with birds. Here at Dover, we have to contend with geese.
The types of birds may vary, from geese, gulls, horned larks, to pigeons, sparrows, starlings, blackbirds, hawks, or vultures. When birds appear, they threaten the health and safety of air crews and the safety of aircraft operations. The bird strike hazard is serious.
It's up to you pilots to be aware of the hazard and to help prevent bird strikes and the damage and injury they cause. You may know all that. You've been enlightened by the flight crew information file and the flying safety pubs, but chances are when you and your co-pilot or your nav are completing your pre-flight routine, filing the flight plan, checking the weather, grabbing a quick burger, birds are the last thing on your mind.
And that's too often the case when you're climbing into your aircraft, waiting to taxi out and roll, or busy getting airborne and on your way. The time to think about bird strikes is before they happen. Studies at Arnold Engineering Center show that there's no point in waiting to find out the hard way what a 4-pound bird impacting at speeds of 400 knots or more can do to your canopy. A whistling swan penetrated the canopy of an F-4 near Boise, Idaho, disabling the pilot. His backseater had to bring him home. A T-38 Thunderbird taking off in Cleveland, Ohio, ingested gulls. Result, the aircraft was destroyed and the pilot killed. A B-52G flying IR-502 near Hastings, Nebraska, encountered a flock of ducks. Multiple bird strikes resulted, shattering the outer pane of the pilot's number 2 window, causing windshield heat arcing and a serious loss of visibility. This and damage to the number 2 and 3 engine pods resulted in an aborted mission.
Bird strikes cost the Air Force millions of dollars a year in damage and maintenance alone, and they can certainly ruin a pilot's day.
My crew and I were on a scheduled airlift mission from Dover Air Force Base to Germany. Our load consisted of cargo, passengers, approximately 45 passengers, and a good fuel load. Aircraft takeoff gross weight was approximately 680,000 pounds. On takeoff, as I called for gear up, we impacted what I thought were birds. The aircraft was stunned, but it continued to fly. My primary concern was aircraft control, airspeed and altitude. Number 2 engine immediately went to an overheat condition. I retarded the throttle on number 2 engine and the light went out. Severe vibrations began to set in. A scanner's report revealed that number 2 engine was indeed vibrating, and also that number 4 engine was on fire. The flight engineers panel looked like a pinball machine, with number 4 shut down and number 2 retarded, and they were quite busy making sure all systems were operational. We elected to return to Dover Air Base. They called the weather a half-a-mile visibility, and we shot an ILS into Dover. The landing was uneventful, and post-flight inspection revealed that we had impacted a flock of snow geese, approximately 50 to 60. We sustained damage from wingtip to wingtip, 222 feet. The left outboard landing light was separated from the aircraft, and the number 2 engine damaged. The number 4 engine fan section blew up, and we had extensive damage to the aircraft.
Here are some things to remember. Pilots and air crews must know where bird strikes are apt to occur. They should be alert and on the lookout for birds at altitudes below 3,000 feet, especially at altitudes below 1,000 feet. They should be prepared to take evasive action if possible, and to follow correct procedures after any known or suspected bird strike.
The right way to deal with the bird strike hazard is to make sure that you and your crew know beforehand where bird strikes are most likely to be found, how you plan to avoid them, and what procedures you'll follow if you take a hit.
Hey, what do you know about bird strikes?
What everyone knows, I guess.
That may not be enough. We got a bird sanctuary here. Bird strikes is a real threat in this area. But they're always a potential hazard in any low-level flying area anywhere. So here's what you got to do. I give everybody that rides with me the same speech. Both visors down to protect your face and eyes. Keep your eyes out of the cockpit as much as possible, looking for planes and for birds. When you see anything out there, sound off. I tell him that if I see any birds in or slightly above my flight path, I'm going to get away. Take immediate evasive action. Pull the aircraft up, or hard left, or right, whatever's called for.
What if we take a bird strike?
Well, say we ingest one. Get a drop in RPM or some other engine indication. First, handle the engine problem. If you even suspect a bird strike, get some altitude and do a controllability check. If you need to, declare an emergency. That's the procedure. And if you're in formation, have your wingman check you over.
What if we take a bird strike through the windshield?
You can expect problems with visibility, excessive noise, possible loss of communications. The pilot might be injured. If I'm okay, I'll shake the stick and we'll climb. Then I'm going to slow down, declare an emergency, assess the damage as well as I can, or have my wingman check me over. In any case, if the aircraft is flyable, we're going home.
Sir, what we were talking about back there? If we should take a bird strike through the windshield and I don't feel you on the stick?
Then it's your airplane. You'll know it. It'll be serious by then. Feathers and plexiglass flying all over the place. You take over. Climb. Declare an emergency. Slow down if you can. Check the aircraft for flyability. Just follow the checklist. If I'm incapacitated, I tell him it's up to him. Get some altitude. Slow down if practical. Assess the damage and make the controllability check. If the airplane is uncontrollable, eject. One more thing. Any bird strike, however slight the damage, or any potentially dangerous bird activity you encounter, report it to the SOF. That information goes to work for you, for all of us.
Bird strikes. It's up to you to be aware of the problem. It's up to you to look out for birds wherever they're likely to be encountered. And it's up to you to report any strike or suspected bird strike to your flying safety officer.
Pilot reports are necessary for the development of effective programs in reducing bird strike risks. Reporting bird strikes is essential to the safety of Air Force pilots and their crews. Your reports are forwarded to the Bird Aircraft Strike Hazard Team at Tyndall Air Force Base. On the basis of your reports, the team analyzes the bird strike data in order to identify specific areas of concern. Here, let me show you some of the facts. Most bird strikes occur during the day, but that's not surprising since we do most of our flying during the day. And since birds are most active at dawn and at dusk, flight during these hours can be particularly risky. Because of bird migration, rates of bird strikes rise in the spring when birds are flying north to their breeding grounds, and peaks in the fall when adult birds and their offspring fly south. Over 60% of the reported bird strikes occur below 1,000 feet. The lower the altitude, the higher the risk. Fighter aircraft log the greatest number of flight hours, especially within the lower altitudes. Therefore, they experience the most strikes. But trainers and multi-engine aircraft take their share of the strikes too. Close to 50% of the bird strikes are experienced in the airdrome environment. Flight on low-level routes accounts for another 26%. But that's not all the information that the BASH team extracts from your reports. The data can also be used by industry to develop bird-resistant aircraft. It can be used as evidence in court proceedings to establish the existence of hazards, and can possibly be used to determine the effects of environmental changes. Our computer-generated low-level bird avoidance model is a valuable tool in planning low-level flights.
While flying approximately 800 feet AGL, 350 knots indicated, we encountered a very large eagle. I rolled the aircraft to the right using full rudder, trying to keep the bird from entering the cockpit. The bird traveled the left side of the fuselage, impacting the leading edge of my left wing. Traveled through the wing, cutting several generator cables, re-entering the left side of the fuselage where it slammed into the throttle cable junction. There it severed 2 throttle cables, completely shutting those engines down. If the bird had impacted 6 inches lower, it would have severed all my throttle cables, immediately shutting down all my engines, leaving us no recourse but to eject. It's very important to keep your eyes out of the cockpit, scan the horizon, and have a plan of action in mind prior to entering these high-threat areas.
The BASH model predicts bird strike risks among military low-level routes from September to May, corresponding to the migration season. On a single graph, for up to 8 routes, the risks are shown for daylight. A second graph shows the risks at dawn and at dusk. A third graph shows the risk for evening periods. With such data available, the ops planner or pilot can pick the least hazardous route for any period of time. Similar studies are made to pinpoint bird populations and their behavior patterns at any base where birds are a problem. This information is used to improve airdrome bird control and management, as well as airdrome operations. The data assembled from your reports is also used in the design modification of aircraft and components, engines, leading edges, and windshields for better resistance to bird strike damage. That's another reason why any bird strike, suspected or actual, or any evidence of any bird strike, however slight the damage, should be reported to the FSO. No bird strike is inconsequential. It is just as important to report as a high EGT on start or a low oil pressure indication during flight. These are indications of a serious problem. Be on the safe side. Report it. Awareness is essential to the solution of the bird strike problem. Awareness at all levels of operations: commanders, planners, pilots, and crews. Before takeoff, all aircrew members should clearly understand the procedures to be followed in any bird strike situation. Pilots should request information about birds in the area. When heavy bird concentrations are sighted and threaten a safe takeoff, delay the takeoff.
Barksdale Tower, Swift 5-1, taxi IFR to Barksdale. Request bird condition.
Swift 5-1 Heavy, Barksdale ground. Taxi runway 14, wind 160 at 4, altimeter 296. Bird advisory, large flock of starlings, approach end of runway 14, 100 feet, moving south.
Pilots flying low-level missions must report any bird sightings to the command post range safety officer. In turn, it is the command post responsibility to alert air crews to the hazard or close the route.
Shreveport approach, Swift 5-1 is out of 9,000 for 6,000. Request bird condition, runway 14 Barksdale.
Swift 5-1 Heavy, Barksdale Tower reports numerous flocks of blackbirds crossing the approach in runway 14 eastbound at 200 feet.
On approach to bases in high-risk areas, air traffic control may ask you to remain higher longer in order to decrease exposure to bird strikes. As a general rule, transitions during high bird activity should be terminated. Full stop landings and single ship takeoffs only. For low-level flights, schedulers and pilots should use the bird avoidance model graphs to plan the least hazardous routes. Flying these routes at increased altitudes and slower airspeeds can minimize the bird strike threat and its damage.
But when it comes right down to it, it's up to the pilot. If you're flying at those lower altitudes, in any area where birds are likely to be concentrated, be aware of the problem.
I was flying an RF-4C at 1,000 feet and 480 knots in the mountains of Idaho. We had just climbed to our MEA, made our turn, gone back to the terrain following mode on the radar, and suddenly there was a violent explosion. I noticed my right quarter panel was gone. The wind blast was blowing debris and bird and plexiglass all over the cockpit. The bird struck me in the chest and in the shoulder area. I had plexiglass embedded into the side of my temple up here. I was very glad I had my clear visor down because I think that saved my eyesight. Crew coordination is very important in a situation like this. My backseater and I had very carefully pre-briefed what we were going to do in this very event, and that plan went into effect. The nearest suitable base of landing for us was Mountain Home, and that's where we took the airplane. After we landed, the post-flight revealed that we had struck 3 ducks, and one was in our intake, one was in the leading edge of the flap, and one came in the right quarter panel.
Remember these precautions. Keep visors down to protect your face and eyes. Keep your eyes out of the cockpit as much as possible, looking for airplanes and for birds. If you see anything out there, sound off. If you even suspect a bird strike, get some altitude, declare an emergency, slow down if possible, and do a controllability check. If you're in formation, have your wingman check you over. When you reach your destination, report any strike or suspected bird strike to the FSO. Bird strikes can lead to serious problems, such as system failures in flight. So your reports not only help you, they help the entire flying community. Birds are beautiful. Birds are a natural balance of nature. Their beauty and grace inspired man's dream of conquering the elements of flight, to fly like a bird. But birds also present a multitude of problems to pilots and their aircraft. Bird strikes can cause serious injuries. Some may be fatal. Repair of bird-caused damage to our sophisticated military weapon systems costs millions of dollars each year. As the Air Force mission continues to emphasize low-level flying, vulnerability of our aircraft and crews to bird hazards will increase. Remember, unless you take precautions to reduce the chances of a bird strike, you may be personally involved in a dangerous encounter.